Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share a part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome back. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. We are so excited to be together in person again after almost 2 years of gathering only online during the coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections with each other online also, as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Good morning, all. I'm Jean Patterson, a member of the Congregation, and I'm so pleased you're here with us in the midst of the dog days of summer. Those of you who stayed home where it's cool, we're glad you're with us as well. Now, we'd like to welcome guests and visitors. So, my fellow congregants, please, after the service, notice the people with the handwritten name tags. Go over, introduce yourselves, welcome them warmly, and maybe it'll be the start of a long and warm friendship. Now we have an update on our beloved Kindle from Andrea Jonson.
Good morning. Before I start my weekly update on Kindle's recovery from her stroke, I would like to invite everyone who hasn't already to fill out our Sunday schedule questionnaire. It's online in many places, and there is a QR code and paper copies in the lobby if you'd like to do it while you're here today. This week, Kendall Gibbons went to a movie and thoroughly enjoyed it. She was able to take Mark and friends out for a birthday dinner on Wednesday, and yesterday they attended the KC Heroes event to honor them, also put on by Free Hot Soup. And she has gotten PT and OT finally started. There were a lot of things difficult to get that going, but it is in progress now, and speech therapy will begin this week. So as Kendall's strength returns and they are getting back to a little bit closer to normal, Mark has actually been seen at church doing the things he loves, helping with technology and showing up to work on some of the HOT Hunger Outreach Team projects. So they are moving along quickly, and we are all very pleased with her progress.
We're very honored this morning to have two very special guests with us. Vern Barnett is a retired Unitarian Universalist minister. He was even here in our pulpit for a while. For 18 years, he wrote a weekly column for the Kansas City Star. He founded the Kansas City Interfaith Council. He's taught at area universities and seminars and has edited and written several books. Vern was the developmental editor for the memoir of Alvin Brooks that we will hear about today. Alvin is a beloved civic leader whose amazing career has touched the lives of all of us, directly or indirectly. He served the city and the nation in many ways. As a police officer in his youth to president of the police board in his retirement. He was a Kansas City councilman and mayor pro tem for 8 years. He holds 5 honorary doctorates. His many awards include the Harry S. Truman Award, joining other recipients such as Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and Madeleine Albright. He was named Kansas Citian of the Year by the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. He is one of America's 1,000 Points of Light. He's also an author, and copies of his book will be available after the service for purchase and signing by the author. And please join me in welcoming to All Souls, Alvin Brooks and Vern Barnett. Now, the pulpit is a very familiar place to Vern. I don't know if you're going to come up here or stay there, but please welcome Vern Barnett.
Thank you very much. May we all stand for the words of gathering. From many backgrounds, with many stories, we arrive with unspoken sorrows and private and shared thrills. We gather to be enlarged with one another, to amplify our hopes, and to give thanks for the joy we may find in duties to one another and to the future. We are joined as a river is joined with the ocean, as a bird is joined with the sky. So may this space join us with infinite love, and this hour join us on the eternal path of human liberation. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Rose, and I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Now, please stand as you are able and join in singing and signing song number 118, This Little Light of Mine. Then remain standing for the affirmation of our covenant.
Good morning. We're going to review a few of the signs before we get into the music. So get yourself some space, make sure you're only hitting somebody intentionally. For the phrase, this little light of mine, we're actually going to sign candle. Your non-dominant hand goes up and wiggles, and we point to it. The sign for my or mine, flat hand at your chest. When we use the phrase, everywhere I go, we'll sing it 3 times, and for each time we're going to sign it a little bit differently. The first time, we're going to walk. We're going to walk everywhere we go. The second time, we're going to ride our car or our bike or our tractor, show where we're going. And the third time, we're going to fly places. This is the hand sign, and just take it and fly. for the verse, building up our world, we're actually going to be using the sign connect and then the sign world. So I'm going to stand back so you can see this one. And finally, we're going to sign the word shine 3 different ways. That's right. I saw somebody already doing it. They know what we're going to do. Shine, shine,
Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
If you are young, you may want to use your imagination to go back to a time when black people were not treated equal with white people in schools, in restaurants, in hospitals, and in workplaces, and with the law. Black people could not even go swimming together with white people, or places like the equivalent of Worlds of Fun. In this book, you will read how Mr. Brooks, when he was a boy, was nearly killed by a police officer. We still have inequalities. Black children had to learn that they would not be treated fairly because of the color of their skin. This story is about Mr. Brooks learning about the color of his skin and what it meant. As a little boy, Mr. Brooks, I'll call him Al, always had chores to do, such as putting wood in the stove in wintertime. This was before his family had a furnace. He took care of the goats. He worked as a shoe shine boy. In those days, black people often worked for white people. Al's mother had a job as a domestic, a house cleaner. On Saturdays, little Al went with his mother to help. He would sweep the porch, the sidewalk, and the driveway, and wash the big window and cut the grass in the front yard. At this house, before he and his mother started work, they would sit in the kitchen with the grandmother and twin boys about little Al's age. The boys would have milk, and the grown-ups would have coffee.
Often after the twin boys finished his milk, he would go to his grandmother's coffee cup, take a spoon and dip coffee from her cup into his glass. Occasionally he would go by my mother's cup and do the same thing. One morning before my mother and I started our chores, after the twin boy finished his milk, he went to my mother's cup and then his grandmother and dipped spoons of coffee from the cups to his glass. His grandmother said, "Grandson, you keep drinking that much coffee, you're going to turn the color of Alvin." When she said that, my mother looked very strange. She immediately stood up and said to me, "Come on, baby, let's go to work." What was said and my mother's reactions troubled me, even though I was just 9 or 10 years old. Later, we were waiting for the streetcar at 36th and Prospect. I asked my mother, what did this meant this morning when she said that if her grandson kept drinking that coffee, he was going to turn my color. My mother only responded, "You'll understand one day, baby." I saw tears in her eyes and asked, "Mama, why are you crying?" She didn't answer. The streetcar came and we went home. When we got home, my mother pulled off her coat and took off her shoes. She picked up her Bible and sat in her old lime green rocking chair with the wooden back and called to me, kneel and place the left side of my head on her lap. This was not the first time my mother had done this. Every time something happened where I was the victim of a racial situation, my mother would do this ritual. She patted me on the right cheek while I laid my head in her lap. She read several verses from the New Testament. Then she'd sing a few verses of Precious Lord, Take My Hand, and would pray this prayer, and I can hear her now. Lord, please help my baby to become the kind of man that you want him to be. I kneeled there for a while with my head in her lap, waiting for more patting of my cheek. Then she would get up with no further explanation about what happened. My mom did the same thing with the incidents of cops drawing the guns on me and threatening me, "Run, nigger, run." She did it many times when I told her about something that happened, even though I often did not fully understand how racist it was.
Now, let's join together and sing our children out to their classes.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to everybody that's here in person, to everyone that's watching online, and even to folks that will be watching sometime in the future. My name is Russ Feldhausen, and it is my honor to serve as the Secretary of the Board of Trustees this year. And I'm here to do the invitation to the offering. In my other part of my life, I also serve as an academic advisor for students at Kansas State University. And one of the pieces of advice that I give most often to graduating seniors is they tend to ask the question, what do I do when I graduate? How do I find those social connections? How do I get involved in my community? And so I tell them, you should go find a third place. Third place is a really interesting concept from Ray Oldenburg. He wrote a book called The Great Good Place in 1989. In that theory, your home is your first place. Your workplace is probably your second place. But that third place, that's something that you have to go find in your life. A third place, he says, is important for civil society, for democracy, for civic engagement, and to give you a sense of place in your own life. He lists 8 characteristics of what he thinks is a good third place, and I want you to listen very carefully to these and think about how these really reflect All Souls. It's a neutral ground. It's a place where everyone is on the same level. It's a place for good conversation. It's a place of regulars, where you see the same people over and over again. It's a place where you can choose to maintain a low profile, or you can get as involved as you want. The mood is very playful. It's accessible, it's very accommodating, and it can really become your home away from home. All Souls, for me, has become my third place. I think it's a great example of one. But for All Souls to continue to be successful, we need your help. One of the big parts of All Souls that I've gotten involved with in the past couple of years is technology. Especially during the COVID pandemic, we really strove to provide a good online experience when we couldn't be here in person. And so over the past couple of years, we've upgraded the computers in the back, we've upgraded the cameras, we've installed a new sound system right before COVID hit, we've been working in Conover to improve things, we're looking at improving our projection system in here, we're continuing to make upgrades, we're looking at changing out some of our networking to get better internet throughout the building. We've also purchased a new meeting owl, and so for those of you that have had online events, you might have gotten to use the owl, where it's a great way to bring people in. We use it for our board meetings all the time. There are several of us that, either due to travel or time commitments, find it hard to be here in person for all of our board meetings, but using technology, we can be there just like we were right in the room. And all of those things are things that you can help us support here at All Souls. Today's offering will support the general budget of All Souls. You can either give here in person, you can also give online. If you go to our website, there is a Give to All Souls button right on the homepage. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in saying the dedication to the offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society. Thank you.
Good morning. This first reading, good morning. And this first reading is from a good friend of Alvin Brooks, Kansas City lawyer John Kurtz of Kurtz and Hubbard law firm. He writes about Alvin Brooks as, "The wisdom of Alvin Brooks is something upon which so many of us have relied now for so many decades. His prudent advice to all of us and how to live our lives, how to solve problems, how to serve others, and how to advance mankind have been treasured by the mighty and the lowly, and equally so. We all have relied upon him for prudence and wisdom. When he became the highest ranking person of color in the history of the city of Kansas City, Missouri, as director of the Department of Human Relations, and thereafter the assistant city manager, everyone knew that he had gotten there by a lifetime of wise choices and careful planning, already at his young age. Alvin Brooks has always been an inspiration to people of all colors to believe in themselves, to realize their dreams, to live meaningful and worthwhile lives.
The second reading is from the last chapter of Binding Us Together by Alvin Brooks. How do you thank all of the people who have entered into your life and taken you down a journey of 86 years? 86 years of not too much interruption, and it's now 90 years. Some setbacks here and there along the way, but all in all, what a journey. God has looked over you, Al Brooks, I often tell myself, and most people have given you so much love and respect. You've been honored far beyond your imagination by block clubs and neighborhood organizations, by fraternities and sororities, by various religious groups, social and civic clubs, by mayors, governors, and other state and local officials, by national organizations, and even by the President of the United States. Mama, I remember you picking up your Bible and sitting in that old lime green rocking chair with a wooden back and calling me to kneel down and place the side of my head on your lap. You prayed, Lord, please help my baby to become the kind of man you want him to be. Mama, I pray that I turned out to be the kind of man that you prayed to God for me to be.
It is a pleasure for me to be back at All Souls. Thank you for your warm welcome, and of course, It's a special delight and honor and privilege to be here with Alvin L. Brooks. I go all the way back to Ray Bragg, and I cherish your distinguished presence in the city, your work for justice. I was happy to receive your minister's invitation to talk about Al Brooks' book, his memoir. But I told Kendall better than me talking about it would be having Al here. And we are all grateful, Al, that you are here. One of the greatest joys in my life has been to work with Al on his book. I continue to be amazed and inspired by the richness and fidelity of Al's life so far. And who knows what more he will do. He's only 90. So I'm going to put a few questions to Al, and we'll just have a little conversation. And a reminder that you can get a copy of the book in the lobby, and Al will sign it for you just the way you want. I also want to mention that just this morning, I learned that Al is in this book, forward by Oprah Winfrey, and this particular copy has a dedication to Al signed by Oprah Winfrey. I think that's worth some applause. Al, you were in the police department as a young man for a number of years. You resigned because you really didn't get the promotion that you deserved, discrimination. And so you went to work for the Kansas City Board of Education. You were sort of an interface for them. When the tragedy, the awful event in our nation's history, the assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr., happened, you were quite clear in the advice that the schools should be dismissed. Your advice was not taken, and instead we had a riot in Kansas City. You did everything you could to let the students know that you understood how they felt after this horrible event. But people were killed. What I would like to ask you about is if you could tell the story of how you led the students to City Hall and how by chance the city manager, with all of the tear gas, happened to hear you talk to the young people, and how you then became the first black person to lead a city department. It's a long story, but say what you want about that important development in your life and in the life of the city.
Vern, that's a lot to talk about, but let me first say that I am honored to be here this morning at All Souls. This is not my first time here. I go back, as Vern did, with Mr. Bragg. That was in the 70s, I think, some years ago. And so it's always a joy and a pleasure to be here at All Souls. It's the humanity that I feel all the time that I'm here among this congregation is one that I wish I could feel throughout the city, throughout this nation, throughout this world. And maybe one day the Creator will have it so that we will be around the world, some 6 billion of us, 330 million of us in this United States of America, that when we walk and when we talk and when we congregate, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our status in life, our sexual orientation, whatever the case might be, that we will feel that humanism, I feel that the Creator set forth for us when it was written that we're all born in the likeness and image of the Creator. Now, Vern, that memorable day in the 9th of April, 1968, the night before, as you mentioned, a meeting was called and the superintendent, James Hasley, was in Washington, D.C., and we didn't have speakerphones and that, so the person who was talking to him had to repeat what he said, and the discussion was whether or not, this was Monday, the evening of the 8th, whether or not the schools ought to be open. Not only myself, but 2 other black men, Dr. A. Campbell and Dr. Robert Wheeler. Dr. Wheeler was assistant superintendent in charge of urban education. Dr. Campbell was director, and I was right under Dr. Campbell in that hierarchy. We were saying that you should not open the school tomorrow. Kansas City, Kansas announced that their school would be out. And we thought it was an injustice to the young people in Kansas City School District if we did not close the school. We were outvoted by 78-year-old white men. The next morning, I was at Grace and Holy Temple Cathedral in a service, and I got a call from Bob Wheeler, assistant superintendent, emergency call. And while I was there, and the speaker digressed just a moment to say that, is there Alvin Brooks in the congregation? I said, yes, you have an emergency call. And so I went, the young lady showed me where the phone, and Bob said, all hell is broke loose, just like we told them. And I don't know what you can do, but the kids are congregating from Lincoln and Central and Manual. And they're now at Truce Lake at 27th and Paseo. And when I got out there, they had marched down to 22nd and Vine. And from there to City Hall, the late Brooke Watkins, Otis Taylor, the great player with the Chiefs, and several others marched with them. And when we got to City Hall, Ike Davis was the mayor and spoke, as well as some others, and the kids chanted for me to speak. My job was working with all those schools in the Division of Urban Education. And I spoke, and then I sensed, then by that time the state troopers had come, and the whole block from 11th to 12th, Oak to Locust, was surrounded by police. And I sensed something was a spark, any spark could start something between the police and these young kids. 100% of them black. And I called Mr. J.D. Williams, who owned Consolidated Cab. That was the only the first cab company in the city that had radio control cars. And I said, and he also had the contract to transport kids, the busing contract. I said, I got to the phone inside. I said, Mr. Williams, something's about to happen. All these kids are down here. Can you get me about a half a dozen or so buses? He said, well, Brooks, you know I have to bring my cab drivers in who drive the buses, but I'll be there as soon as I can. The first bus, before the bus got there, the tear gas began to come. And knowing that tear gas goes up and you go down. So I was face down in front of City Hall with the city manager, and he introduced himself. And he said, I really liked what you said to those kids and how they chanted for you to speak and how they listened attentively to what you were saying. He said, when this thing is over, I really would like to talk to you. And I said, great. And he told me his name, John Taylor. He was city manager. And I told him my name, and I was a coordinator over at the Board of Education. Fast forward. That particular day, when the first bus arrived, the tear gas was out. Went all in the bus. And the kids were boarding the bus, but they had to abandon the bus eastbound on 12th Street. Father Timothy Gibbons, the priest at Holy Name Catholic Church at 22nd and Benton, had made arrangements for the kids to come there. When they got there, the police were there and threw tear gas in the church basement. And we went there, Bruce Watkins, late Bruce Watkins, who was city council person, and myself, and there were the 5 canisters of tear gas. The kids were gasping all out on the lawn. That night is when the riot started. Not by the kids, really by the police. National Guards were called in. And of course, thousands of dollars went up in smoke. 6 black men were killed, 4 at 30th and Prospect, a 15-year-old McKinney Jr. None of these were armed. In fact, McKinney Jr. and his dad was coming out of the Byron Hotel there at 30th and Prospect, running, and he got shot. No grand jury was ever convened. Nobody was ever indicted. And the report that was given on August the 15th of that year, an analysis of the riot, said that no evidence was shown as to who fired the shots that killed these 6 people. A few days later, I got a call from John Taylor. He wanted to meet with me. And he came to my office at the Board of Education and asked me, he said, there's an opening for the secretary to the Mayor's Commission on Human Relations. I wonder if you'd be interested. Well, I knew that the advertisement had gone out and it actually closed, and they'd actually offered the job that the committee had submitted 3 names to the mayor and the city manager for selection. I knew this, and I didn't say anything to John about this, but later on, John Taylor offered me the job. And I said, you know, the mayor has said that I was a radical. I'm a radical, and as long as he was mayor, I'd never be in City Hall. He said, but he's changed his mind after the riot. The 27th of May, 1968, I was sworn in as the first African-American to head a department in city government.
Thank you, Al. And it's one example of how Al has been at the center of life in Kansas City. And remember, this was before people knew who Al Brooks was. He was just a kid, basically, a very young man. The city manager recognized the qualities, or some of them, that we've come to cherish. Now, Al, you're taller than I am, but you're not as tall as the man you ran against for mayor. There's a wonderful picture in this book. I don't know if you can see this, but it appeared in the Kansas City Star, and Al and Mark Funkhauser are sitting there together. Al, you don't look as tall as Mark Funkhauser. How did you work that out? This was before.
I grew a few inches. What happened was that the Kansas City Star had already decided to endorse Funkhauser, but yet they brought me in a patronizing way to be interviewed by the editorial board. I have a friend who was a member of the editorial board that told me afterwards that they had already made a decision. If I'd have known that, I never would have allowed myself to be submitted to that interview. But on a Friday before the election in March of 2007, they asked me and Mark to come down to pose for photos for that Sunday paper. And so I go, and I'm 5'11", Mark was 6'8". That's what, about 9 inches taller? And so when I get there and I'm sitting there and Mark is up here, and I looked over and said, no way am I going to let this white boy be taller than me. Because I had seen the movie Ali, and Chris Christopherson and Ali were boxing, and by the camera showed Chris Christopherson taller than Muhammad Ali, which I knew wasn't the truth. So I said, hold on. The cameraman, I said, hold on. So I go around the house and says, anybody got phone books? Anybody got phone books? They say, what do you want, the white or yellow page? Doesn't make any difference. Give me a phone book. So I got 4 phone books, sat on those phone books, and we were the same height. In the Star paper that Sunday, I go out and get the paper with my robe, getting ready to go to church. And I got a call from Pat Gray, who was my campaign director. And he said, Al, how in the hell did you grow 11 inches? I say, with 4 telephone books under my butt. That's how I did.
Al, President George Herbert Walker Bush asked you to serve on a national drug commission. I think that may have been the time you said to the president, Mr. President, I know why you have asked me to serve. It's because you've run out of decent Republicans. How did you get known nationally for Bush to come to town? What had you done?
Well, I'm not sure what I had done, but there was a group that I founded called the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, founded in 1977, 1978. And we had a reputation, as a group under the Ad Hoc Group umbrella called Black Men Together, about 40 to 50 black men. And we were closing drug houses. Clara McCaskill was the prosecutor, and then the U.S. Attorney's Office and Dick Berkeley was the mayor. The U.S. Attorney's Office had assigned Rob Lawson, assistant to the U.S. Attorney, to work. This is when the Jamaicans brought crack cocaine into the area. And so we got together. Every Saturday, we would work undercover with some other police officers and find out where the crack houses were. And so then we would come back that following Saturday with a list. Larry Joyner was the police chief, and it was my job to call Larry. I said, Larry, listen, beginning next Saturday, we're going to have a blitz, and we're going to, some 14 crack houses, we're going to, the black men, 45th was going to approach and move them out of the community. He said, oh, you can't do that. These Jamaicans aren't playing. They're killing each other, plus a number of us, not police officers, but a number of other people. So I said, Larry, we're going to do it. We don't want you to protect us. All we want you to do is give us passage through the stop sign. The stop might be 25 or 30 cars. So we closed over 300 crack houses. We didn't have to have a warrant. We didn't do any testing. We didn't serve any warrants. We just, 5 or 6 of black men would just walk up to the house. The rest of us in the street with a bunch of kids and women. We borrowed a casket from Lawrence A. Jones Funeral Home. The kids made posters and put on the casket. We rolled that up in front of the crack house. We'd go and knock on the door, kick on the door. Most times someone would come and say, you see, we're a group, the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime. We're black men protecting the community. You've got to get out of the community. And we will be back next Saturday. If you're not here, something bad is going to happen to you. And everyone that we went, except one, moved out. And it's interesting, I got a call that Saturday. It was in the 70-some block of Bell Fountain, if you're familiar with Kansas City. And this fellow who was a dope dealer challenged us. And a fellow named Calvin Neal, who's about 6'4", 6'5", 260 pounds, above all people to challenge Calvin, ex-offender and you know, knew his way, a boxer and all. And so after that, the people, we said, listen, don't argue with him. That Monday, this was a Saturday, that Monday, I was asked by that area people to speak about what's going on. And as soon as I walked in the room, 30 or 40 people began to applaud. And they said, we're happy that ad hoc burned down that crack house. I said, no, ad hoc don't burn down no crack house. Somebody set it afire, though, between Saturday and Sunday night. It wasn't us, and I didn't want to take that applause. But as a result of that, Bill Bennett, who was the drug czar, gave me a call, and he was appointed as the first drug czar. And he asked if he could come and visit with us in Kansas City. He'd heard about it, because we had received national and international attention. Canada, and as well as the United Kingdom, all had come over to see what we were doing and marched with us. So he came in October of 1968 and stayed over the weekend, and his old entourage with him, and we marched with him, and some of the crack houses we closed. And in December, and he said, you know, the president's setting up a commission of 35 members, the President Drug Advisory Council. I'd like to submit your name. So I said, let me check with the board. We really didn't have a board at the time. Oh, yes, we did. We had a board at the time. I said, I didn't want to go there representing it without the board, and they said yes. So it was in the makings. In December, I got a call from Bill Bennett. He said, listen, the president would like to come out to Kansas City. You think that you all could host him? Our offices were at the Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church, the lake where Wallace Horsfield was a pastor. And I said, Pastor, you think? He said, sure. So they sent the advance team out, and then in January 23rd, I think it was, of 1990, George H.W. Bush came out. Now, with regard to Vern's comment, we were sworn in March of 1990 in Washington. President was there. It was a luncheon. And when he came, he was introducing certain people, 31 of us. When he came to me, he spent some time. He said, I was in Kansas City, and Al Brooks did this, and Al Brooks did this, and we're proud of him, and I got a standing ovation, all like that. And so I said, he said, any remarks? I said, well, Mr. President, you shouldn't have asked me if I had any remarks, but I wanted this congregation and the media to know, the only reason you appointed me to this commission is you run out of black Republicans.
I'm reading your book, Al. It's very interesting. You even mentioned Miller Nichols went on one of those walks, but our time is rapidly disappearing. Let me ask you really quick about a current issue, and that is some guy in the legislature from Parkville has gotten the Missouri legislature to require the city council to appropriate 25% of the budget to the police department instead of the previously mandated 20% by the state. Kansas City doesn't have local control. What are you going to do about that?
Well, I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I know what I'd like to do about it, but first of all, I think it's something called taxation without representation. And that's what it is. We, the taxpayers of this city, foot the bill, but we have nothing to say as to how the police department spends its money. I'm a former police officer, but I served 7 years on the Board of Police Commissioners appointed by Governor Jay Nixon and 2 years as president. And I'm very familiar with the operations of the police department. It was something that I wanted really to retire, but because of the racism and discrimination in the department, I left after 10 years and never looked back. But the city council approves the budget after the Board of Police Commissioners approves the budget. But in this case, the city had already been giving. The statute says before it was changed by the legislature, and the person from Parkville, who was the legislator there, he introduced the bill into the legislation. And it's interesting, the outstate people have a supermajority in both the House as well as the Senate for the state of Missouri. Therefore, those who are Democrats, it doesn't make any difference. They can't do anything because the Republicans have the supermajority. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or vegetarian. There's something wrong with this whole thing that's going on. And so since the city was already appropriating 5% more than the statute called for, this legislator decided that he would be a hero and come in and use the term defunding the police, which is a false narrative. What the city was trying to do is to set aside about $42 million for social programs and instructing the police department to do certain things with that $42 million. They went to court. Judge Harrell said this should have been done. He left the door open. It should have been done at the time that you negotiated the budget. And now we're midway, and so it was thrown out. So this, I think, is something that this city, the citizens of this community, ought to be concerned about. The city went under state control back in the 1930s under Pendergast. And so the citizens turned to the state to take over the police department because of that. Pendergast has long been gone to glory in someplace else. And all of that period of time, along with the mafia that was close at the time when I came on. It was when I came on in 1954, the Pendergast and mafia was on their way out. But still, there were some remnants of it still in the community, particularly the African-American community. And so I'm saying that it's time that the citizens say that enough is enough. That we foot the bill, we ought to be able to have the mayor and the council to appoint a board of police commissioners that are responsible to the citizens of this community, not the 4 people that are appointed. And some of them will say, well, it's already local control. That's a bigger lie than Chicken Little Toe. It's not local control just because we're appointed by the governor. And I've never said that since I was on the board, when I was on the board. So I think that the only way to change that is by referendum. And the only way to do that is what, like Singfield, the billionaire, did in St. Louis. He paid for people going around the state with a petition for referendum, and it passed, and St. Louis is now under city control, been there about 5, 6, 7 years. That'll have to happen in Carrollton City. Now, there is a petition going around now to present to the mayor, and the mayor and the city council have nothing to do with that. Even if presented to the governor and the state legislature, you got outstate people who could care less about Kansas City and St. Louis, the urban communities. And so the only way to do that is through referendum, but you've got somebody who's got to have some deep pockets that can pay people to go around, because volunteers can't do it, pay people to go around and sign a petition for a referendum to put before the voters. And that's the only way that it can happen. But I think it's time that this city you don't have the kind of city manager, mayor, city manager, city council that you had during the Pendergast days. And you may differ with some of the city council people, may differ with the mayor, may differ even with the city manager, but it's a lot different than it was in the 30s when the change came.
Thank you, Alvin Brooks, for your lifetime of insight and leadership from very, very young, continuing at age 90, and on to the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Life begins at 90. What is it? Charlie Wheeler, the mayor, when he was running for I think the governor or the senator, and he was skipping down the sidewalk, and he was, I think, 80 at the time, and he said, 80 is the new 40.
remain standing for our final song, One More Step.
Fire is a symbol in every world religion that I know about. It's a precious symbol, the flaming chalice, for Unitarian Universalists. I'm also so grateful to Al for his embrace of religious diversity. One of the practices in Hinduism, arti, is to take the blessing of the flame and bring it into oneself. So before I extinguish the flame of the flaming chalice, let's just do that. And now the flaming chalice is extinguished, but within us, with the example of Al Brooks, we are renewed in our search for divine light and service to one another for justice and peace. Amen.
I know this did not come after the benediction. But let me say that my brother and my friend, Reverend Vern Barnett, if it not had been for Vern, I would not have been able to write this book and have it published. Vern, I thank you, my brother and my friend, for being my brother and my friend. And you who are members here at All Souls, I know many of you already know Vern. Please keep him in our prayers. Keep me in your prayers. Keep each other in your prayers, and keep the world in your prayers. And hopefully the Creator, and the Creator's own time, will make a difference to where we can sing and pray and love each other as it was intended to be. And again, amen.